Welcome to the show today. Today we've got Eladio Valdez, and he is a big-time runner in the Kansas City area. You had an amazing feat that you just kind of accomplished. What we hope to do with this show is teach anyone that's new to running some things that'll save you some time, as well as kind of take you to the next level if you're trying to achieve greatness. What's your latest run? How far did you go?
I made it, well, the goal was to try to make it 40 miles. It was a little warmer than I thought. The number one goal was to run for 9 hours. All day, basically. I wanted to see if I could run from sunrise to sunset.
And that's never walking, nothing.
No, you have to walk.
Okay.
Yeah, you build in walking breaks because when you're drinking and replenishing, so it's like driving. You have a few rest stops along the way, but yes, you're mostly driving when you go from A to Z. So I was mostly running, but stopped a few times to drink and go to the bathroom, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I haven't done any massive runs. When I was in college, we had to do tons of running for baseball. You know, you'd pitch or whatever, and then what you'd have, take your hour and a half run, 2 hours, get your arm right. So I don't really know what the mileage would have been, but probably the farthest I've ever run is maybe like 8, 9, 10 miles.
That's pretty good.
But 38, 39 miles, that's what you're saying? That's what you end up running?
I did, yes. Yeah, I did a 60K, which is basically 37 and a half miles. Oof. And I was wide open. I was happy with it because my number one goal while running the whole day was I've had this cramping issue with muscle cramps because I sweat so much. So I was like, I got to go so slow that I don't sweat so much so I can keep up with my sweat loss per hour.
Right.
So I did it. So I was like, okay, this is what I have to do today. So, you have a plan, you adjust, and then you go, this was good enough. So I was very happy.
Was there more in the pre-setup for that, for you to accomplish that goal on the hydration side of things, or were you kind of already doing those things and it was more about pacing?
Yeah. I've had several runs of 5 hours or more. This one took 10 hours. Because I said, well, if I'm going to go slower, then I now have to go longer. So instead of 9 hours, I went 10, which I'm like, oh my gosh, I ran 10 hours. So along the way, I did 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 hour buildups and figured out what I need to do. How much can I hydrate without doing it too much? Because your stomach, you can flood it a little bit. So it was this balancing act of what does my body need without overdoing it and without underdoing it? What's the sweet spot? And I was happy to say that I finally achieved it after the 10th try.
So how long was the training regimen? So when you picked your date, how long did it take you to get there?
It took me a year.
A whole year.
Yeah, because prior to this past year, my longest ever training run. So I used to be more of a half marathoner, which is good. But because of that, my longest training run was just over 3 hours. So to put it into context, for the first 40 years of my life, my longest ever training run was 3 hours and 28 minutes. This year, I have been averaging 3 hour runs every weekend.
Oh, man.
So it's just getting my body used to this and that and just staying in the game.
Yeah.
So, no, it's been a year in the making, and I never, ever would have dreamed, because I pretty much still consider myself like a 5K runner. So for a 5K runner who jams in 5s and 10s, 3 and 6 mile races, going this long is like a whole new ball of wax, a puzzle to solve. And so to me, it was a big deal that I lasted that long compared to being more like the short distance guy. In the world of running 5Ks and 10Ks, that's short distance.
Right.
Half marathons, that's considered middle distance. And then the ultra runners are, 50K, 50 miles, 100 miles. They're the ones that think all of this is just sprints.
It's kind of crazy because it's like you're fine tuning just the ultimate of perfection when you're trying to get that long. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, your margin of error becomes thinner and thinner the longer you're out there.
Yeah, because I guess your body just what does it feel like when you're what was your biggest challenge on the cramping by mile 20? What, your body just starts locking up, or what were you exactly feeling and when?
So the good news is, for the longest time, I actually enjoyed the route. I picked the route that had a lot of scenery. I went back to Lawrence, Kansas. I went to KU, and so memory lane. So I went to here. I combined all my old runs that I used to, go hour for this way, that way, and I combined it. I go, you know what? I can do all of my runs in one run.
Right.
So I went to all these connect the dots, and for the most part, I'd go here, and then all the memories would flood back, and that would distract me from the duration.
Yeah.
But I would say mile 27 is when I felt my first twitch in my hamstring. That's always my Achilles heel. Is my weakness is my hammies. Anyway, I go, okay. So 27 miles, I had fun. And I was like, okay, you got to go slower from here on out. Here's what you signed up for. You're going to see if you can go without any more than a twitch. And I did. So I had to go slower, took more breaks, stretch breaks, that kind of stuff. So most of the day was fun. And then that latter third of the day was, okay,
now we're working.
Figure this out. So my mantra was figure it out. And my positive attitude stayed. I was a little nervous because had enough cramps to know if you don't address this correctly, you're going to be, like you said, locked up and, handicapped for
So what is it? Just the feeling of not letting it get too far? You've got to stop, let it rest a little bit, a little light stretching just to make sure it doesn't get too far gone. Is that the
cramps are fatigue based, and fatigue. So a non-cramper, when they reach the same fatigue point as a cramper, they just get more tired. They bonk. They just go, I'm tired. Well, cramper, when they reach that same fatigue point, they cramp.
Yeah.
So it's like an injury while you're running. You're now hobbling, and now you're trying to deal with that on top of being tired. So it's bonking plus. And so my bonk point, my body tells me when it bonks by locking up with the muscle, and then it spreads to other muscles. And I've had it so bad that even after a marathon in Chicago, I hobbled into this porta potty, and I'll just say this with you guys. It's a funny story. Whatever muscle allows you to pee, I cramped. Whatever that muscle was. And outside of the porta potty, you thought a little girl was in there because I'm like, and I didn't know how to stretch that. That was how bad it was. And I've had every muscle cramp, like toes, every muscle you can think of. Even my jaw cramps when I get real bad. So I'm eating food and I go, oh my God. So it gets really crazy when you spiral out of control. So my goal was, okay, fine. That's my challenge. I'm going to figure this out. And not only am I going to figure it out, I'm going to figure it out by running all day. It's my way to say, I'm going to get you cramps.
Yeah,
and I did it.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. What was the pre-hydration? Is that like days before? It kind of almost planned to be the most hydrated without drinking too much water, so you got to stop and pee all the time kind of a thing?
Yeah. The other thing I do is I go by how many times do I stop per hour, because you want to err on the side of too much, a little bit too much, than not enough. Not enough to get you in trouble. A little too much, you just excess. You pee out the excess.
Yeah.
So in my 10-hour run, I went to the bathroom 19 times.
Jeez.
So most of it was in the first half.
Is that a tree, like that kind of thing? I mean, what do you do? How do you stop that many times in a city setting?
My routes, as a guy, I purposely pick sections, since the majority of my going to the bathroom is when I'm trying to, like you said, I hydrated before the run. So I was so well hydrated that when I ran, I had to kind of release the excess. So I look for a lot of wooded areas, and I'm discreet about it. I go off to the side and do my thing, and then get back on track. And then the later part of the route, I know how my body works. I can do the, open areas where you don't have to go as much, so you're okay.
Yeah.
And then I also plot out. I know where the convenience stores, and I know where to go if I have to. And I go, okay. I run by it. Do I got to go? Yeah, go stop inside and that kind of stuff. So you're right. There's a lot of little details that go into planning out when you're out there forever, and one of them is, where do you go to the bathroom?
Well, it's kind of weird. There's a couple different challenges I've heard about. Like, you get super raw nipples. You've got your shoes may be too tight on your feet, so then your toenails might be an issue down the road. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could become a factor that you wouldn't think of. Chafing between your thighs, your armpits get a little raw. All those things. Do you got answers for any of these? If you were to go one by one?
Before the cramping puzzle, I had figured all that out.
Right.
Through the chafing everywhere. So I learned what product to use. It's called squirrel nut butter. So I put it everywhere and that I've ever chafed, and that works. And
does that for any distance, or do you have to reapply?
No, it holds up. It's not.
Wow.
So it's not water based, meaning you can sweat. It doesn't break down like Vaseline. It breaks down. So I've learned that. I've learned what not to use.
Sure,
and I've learned what to use, and so the cyclists are the ones that turned me on to this product, because the cyclists, they routinely go out for 5 to 10 hour bike rides.
Right.
So they really need a product that once you apply it, it stays. So anyway, so the trial of errors of the shoes, the size. So I get a shoe that is at least a thumbnail length in front of my longest toe, because your feet do swell a little bit from longer you're out there. They swell even more. So all of these things that you pointed out, been there, done that, School of Hard Knocks. So, but good news is the remaining piece of the puzzle was how do I solve cramps? But I had solved the other puzzles.
That's so interesting. I don't even like to drive for 9 or 10 hours, so I couldn't imagine sitting there and running.
It is. It's like driving for 10 hours. You have to concentrate.
How did you drive home after that?
Oh, see, that was the part. I had to also save energy for the drive to Lawrence and the drive back to Lawrence. So it was like an hour drive each way. So it was really, it was like it's a 12-hour ultra. And I knew that. So I go, you don't want to waste yourself. So that way your line spread out on the ground for 3 hours and you don't know how you're going to get in your car.
Right.
So I knew that I just wanted my mind to be tired, but my body to still feel like it can keep going. So yeah, when I did this, I was like, you're planning from the time you leave the house to the time you've showered, eaten, and now you're sitting at the couch, your finish line. So I really didn't relax until after I ate, after I showered, and I sat on the couch. And I'm like, this is my finish line. I made it.
Because for you, with your body, you could have been cramping at any point in time after the race. So it's not over till it's over, right?
Yes. So a year ago, actually, the reason I did this for years, a year ago, I went to Lawrence and I attempted a shorter distance, a 50K, 31 miles. And I cramped both. At mile 21, I cramped so bad I had to walk it in. The last 10 miles, I had to walk, and I had to walk ever slower because cramping got worse and worse. And then when I got done, I cramped for 9 additional hours. I couldn't go to bed till 2:30 in the morning, and I had to rubber band my feet to my ankles because my calves kept cramping. It was horrific. I got my worst beat down ever. So the good news is to come back all 365 days later, go back to the same course, and not only go longer. And it was a hotter day. I slayed the dragon.
Yeah, for sure. Heat, I'm assuming, is a major problem as well as far as trying to plan for hydration.
For sure, yeah. If I did this in December, my sweat rate would be way lower and I wouldn't have to worry so much.
Is there times of the year that you enjoy running more than others?
Oh, yeah. Most runners, including me, fall and spring are our favorites. Winter's fine. It just sometimes it gets so cold. Fall and the spring, you can still dress, shorts and a long sleeve shirt and be perfect. Summer's my hardest. Yeah. And that's why I also chose this hottest. I want to say I made a hard thing harder, but I survived. There's just something about what I like about running is you on top of your busy life, your stressful life, you choose to say, look, I'm in the game to fight. And this is my way to fight. I'm not hurting anybody. Yeah, I'm hurting myself, but I'm learning a lot about myself. And if I can do this voluntarily, then what can I do with the rest of the areas of my life that I have to do obligation or not?
Yeah, so you did it in July, right? Or what's the month? August.
Yeah, I did it mid-August.
Yeah, just the hottest part of the year.
The hottest part of the summer, yes.
So to say that you slay the dragon is an understatement. You took the hardest time of the year and did it all with all the sweat factors. I mean, congratulations. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Thank you.
So if you were to take a runner from runner, I'd like to go through, people in my life, it always starts with a 5K. Someone wanted a T-shirt. Someone else was doing it. Everyone kind of gets involved. But I feel like most everybody I know that signs up for a 5K, kind of they get into this thing where, oh, that wasn't so bad. Now I want to do a half marathon. And I feel like the transition is not small. Everyone I know that went from the 5K where it was kind of like, hey, I used to be an athlete. I can run this. It kind of hurt because I haven't run in a long time. Yep. But that half marathon window is a bit of a bear for people that aren't in condition for it. Knees start killing them. Feet were miserable. I haven't really heard of anybody that was just like, oh, yeah, it was a piece of cake. They fell apart a little bit by the end. So for you, like what kind of advice would you have, the simple steps to build someone from a 5K transition to a half marathon?
I think the number one thing people have to understand, our ego gets in our way. All of us. There's not one person that, even the most non-competitive person, is still hard on themselves. Our inner critic.
Right.
So the number one thing I tell people is, look, the longer the race that you're after, the more endurance becomes the thing you need to focus on the most. So endurance is time spent running. So I'll give you a simple math problem. Let's say you got to 10 mile, you have on your schedule, you're going to do a 10-mile training run. It's your longest training run for the upcoming half marathon. And you could do it at 9-minute pace. You could. You'd be breathing harder. You'd struggle through it, but you could do it. Now, my advice is do it at 10-minute pace because the exact same 10-mile run, you added 10 minutes of endurance. Now your ego's like, oh, that's slower. But your body's like, no. I had to concentrate for 10 minutes longer. And here's the best part. When you go slower, you get more endurance, but you lower your risk of injury. You increase your pleasure because you're like, I can do this. You get to your forever effort. So you got to find your forever effort. What's the effort that you need to run at, and be okay with whatever that is, whether it's 9, 12, or 15-minute pace. That's irrelevant. You got to tune into your body and tell your body, look, we're going 10 miles a day no matter what. And then your body's going to say, okay, but you got to do it at this pace. So the number one thing I tell runners is to go slower. That's the number one thing I do. And if you go slower, I call it the pat of butter theory. So you got this pat of butter, you have this amount of energy, and the more you can spread it, the longer you can last. And the more you gobble it up in one setting, the more you're in trouble.
Sure.
And that's where, go back to the 10 mile. Is you go 5 miles out, you come back 5 miles. So 5 miles out, yeah, it's going to be easy because it's early. But you're all excited. Then you turn around, you're like, oh my gosh, I got 5 more miles.
It all. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did 5 miles out at 9-minute pace, but then you come back at 11-minute pace because you start walking. Now, there's nothing wrong with walking, but if you're forced to walk rather than proactively walking,
right,
that's not a good thing. So slow down, and that's the way to go further. And I'll finish with this little point. The number one thing human beings have going for them, and I tell this, I'm very zealous about this, is our sweat rate. Our sweat glands allow the human species to have the greatest endurance of all the land animals. So all the other animals, they're way faster than us, but they don't cool off like we do. So they peter out. They overheat. So they got to run, stop. We can, if we learn how to pace ourselves, i.e. listen to our bodies and replenish enough, then we can keep going. And that's why you see crazy stories of people that go 100 miles, 200 miles, and beyond, and they're mostly running it. They're not mostly walking it.
Right.
The point is, for a 5K runner, is if you are okay with listening to your body and going slower, then it is still hard, but now you're making a hard thing a little less hard.
So would you take a 5K runner and just say you can do a half marathon, or do you have some kind of a build-up that you would recommend on I'm sure there's a million different recommendations, but for a general rule of thumb, is there some kind of a how many weeks out, how many miles you should be getting to? Should you be kind of in a wheelhouse at any certain time?
Everyone's so different. So I've been coaching for 25 years. I've had a group called the Runner's Edge. And so I've seen people all shapes, sizes, ages, abilities, and goals. And so some of them, they want to do it tomorrow, and others, they want to be very methodical and plan it out and say, I'm going to see if I can do a 10K, and then I'll build up to half, and then I'll build, they do it more systematically. So I just tell people, look, yes, the smaller your baby steps, the more realistic it is, the more enjoyable it is, the less likely you'll break down and get injured. However, I get people that say, look, for example, a female who's like, look, I'm going to start a family, so I want to get this done this fall. So, and they're like 8 weeks out. So I'm like, okay. So in that case, so I'll give them a schedule where they're actually going to go into the race in less shape because I got to keep them healthy versus somebody who says, look, you got me for a year, so help me get there. Oh, then great. We can do more miles. We can follow the path that will have you very prepared and safely prepared.
Right.
So I really tell, obviously for a 5K to half, I would say that at least you want a minimum. If you're already in 5K shape, so you've completed 5K and you've run at least 3 miles, that's your longest run, you can get to a half marathon, 13 miles. So you can build up the extra 10 miles at least in 3 to 4 months. Now, that just means once a week, we're going to have you go a little longer, once a week. But because you're going a little longer, I want you to go slower. If you buy into the slow part, you can do it because your body will say, woo, I was fine until that last mile. And you had mentioned that, why does it get exponentially harder? Aha, why does it get exponentially harder? We try to answer that because you after a while, you need energy. You've been losing energy. And everyone has their own point where when you get dehydrated enough, when you get low enough on your glycogen, your energy stores, your electrolyte stores. So when your gas tank light goes on, and that's different for everybody because somebody who's a newer runner, who's got less of an endurance base, their check engine light's going to go on way sooner than
Right.
somebody who's been running for years and years, and now they just finally want to do a half marathon because their friends are all doing it, and they go, wow,
Right.
I've been a runner, but I need to do a half marathon. Well, obviously, their check engine light's not going to go on until way later. So we need to find everybody's check engine light point, and the number one way to prevent that from happening sooner versus later is to go slower.
Gotcha. So should you ever be running a full half marathon before your race day if you kind of planned accordingly? I just think of the
ahead.
many examples I have of people that weren't super trained. They decided about 4 months out they were going to run this thing, kind of a little lackadaisical at first, and get a little closer. Oh man, I got to get in shape. I got to do this. And I've had conversations where some would run the full thing like I'm good because I've already run it many times. And then, I've read different things too with runners or, you're trying to peak at that time. Is that something you stand by an awful lot or is it just by runner base?
Yeah, it's individual. I obviously, like if you're after a goal time and you've run it 10 times and now you're after your all-time PR, yeah, you need to go over distance. You need to make the half marathon feel like a race by going up to 18, 20, 22 miles. Basically, if you're, no, these are people
Get me sweaty.
Yeah, these are people that are trying to race it. Like,
yeah.
And it doesn't mean they have to be fast. So you can be again, the time is irrelevant to the person. But yeah, if you're after time go, yes, you need to go over the distance. If you're after just to finish, then my number one goal is to help them stay healthy. Because you can get in great shape and then 2 weeks out, you get injured. So much of that is wasted because an injured runner who's super fit will never do as well as an undertrained runner who's
shin
healthy.
Splints or something or a bad knee coming into
health
it.
Is number one, always number one. So it depends on the runner and it depends on their goal. But on average, going to the 5K to half marathon, I would say if you build up to 10 miles, you're ready because on race day, the adrenaline, the excitement, then you taper. So let's say you build up 10 miles and then 2 weeks later, you cut back down on your distance and your long runs, you freshen back up. And that is what allows you to go from feeling kind of tired from the training to, I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to roll. Let's do this. You line up, you put a bib number, you got all these people around you, got the music. Your energy level is higher than it's ever been. And your freshness level is higher than it's ever been. That's what allows you to do the remaining 3.1 miles.
What is that window of the taper before to make sure that you're freshest? When your experience, is it 2 weeks? Is it 1 week? What's that distance for you to feel the best?
The average person does good with 2 to 3 weeks for a half. It could be 2 to 5 weeks for a marathon. It really depends on their life schedule. So if you have a really busy life schedule and you're not getting enough sleep and you're under a lot of duress, you should taper longer. But on average for a half marathon, 2 weeks out. So you're building, 2 weeks out, then you cut back.
So you say you've hit 10 miles, you've hit 10 miles, 3 weeks in a row. You're 2, 3, 4 weeks out. Then what? You're going to start moving into like 5 mile runs, or
you cut back a little bit. So on average, so that 2 weeks out, you're going to cut back to 75% of what you were the prior average of the 3 weeks, and then you'll cut back to 50% the week of.
Gotcha.
So 100, 75, 50% is a good cutback. You still got to run the same number of days. You still got to run the same pace. You got to stay sharp.
Yeah.
But you're just, the volume's coming back down.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
What's that hardest transition that when you think that, okay, I'm ready to try one of these marathons? What is the difference between the half marathon, other than, of course, the distance? I'm assuming that the preparation is way more essential. But what do you find to be like the biggest obstacles to jump over from a half marathon to a marathon when someone wants to do their first?
Okay, good question. So compared to a 5K to half marathon jump, I would say most people would say that it was tough, but I did it. Very few people will say that it was easy and doable when they go for the half to the full. Because our model for marathons, and I've done 29 of marathons, so one of my side goals is I wanted to do 25 marathons in a 25-year period. So from 1989 to 2014, I averaged 1 marathon per year. And so when I reached my goal, I kind of semi-retired from marathons. I'm like, did it. And then since then, it takes something special for me to go back out there. Now I know I'm doing ultras, and so that would make it seem logical that eventually I'll get back into marathons, and that would be true. So I just wanted to try different things. Anyway, so what I would tell somebody, when you go from a half marathon to marathon, what we call it the halfway point of a marathon is mile 20. So the first 20 miles, you're going to suffer an amount that is equivalent to what you're going to suffer from mile 20 to 26.2.
That's the wall, huh?
Yeah. That what happens, the wheels start coming off. Most people haven't taken the time to figure out nutrition, hydration, electrolytes, pacing themselves, given the day, the terrain. There's a lot of subtle things, and so not everybody hits the wall, but I would say at least 80% of all marathoners around mile 18 to 22, they're going to go from feeling like I can do this to, oh my gosh, can I do this?
Yeah.
And then they're freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh. It's like an invisible bear jumps on you, and you're all of a sudden breathing hard, and your legs are feeling like lead, and every step you take is sharp pain. And then your mind is checked out. Your mind's like, you're done. What the heck are you doing?
Right.
And you're fighting all these things.
Well, that's a real wall at a marathon. I mean, that's a real body failure wall, right?
Yes.
It's not like the half marathon where maybe you can still push through it. You're not truly going to completely
you won't hit a
dehydrate your
wall.
body.
Yeah. So the difference is, in a half, you won't hit a wall. You'll get tired. Don't get me wrong. It's hard. You'll get tired. In a marathon, you'll hit a wall. The difference between a marathon and an ultra marathon is you're going to hit multiple walls in an ultra marathon.
Oh.
You'll have the cycle of where you go, oh my gosh, then you have, oh, I'm not so bad. Then you go, oh my gosh, no, I am bad. So it's almost like our pick your poison.
Yeah.
So the goal in the marathon is to solve that wall puzzle, how to lessen the wall, so that way you're like, hey, I climbed over it. It wasn't bad. It was hard, but I figured it out. And that's where the long runs come in, because if you don't do long enough long runs, you're never going to know what happens to you when you reach that point. And so whereas a half marathon, 10 miles is long enough, you really need at least to get up to 20 miles, at least for the marathon, and preferably 22. What you want to do is go really slow for 22, so that way when you go on all the way to race day, you're going to naturally go a little quicker because you're more excited and you're fresh.
Right.
But when you went slow for 22 miles, you're going to get very close to matching the duration for that 20 to 22 miler. So you're going to say, my longest run was 3.5 hours, and it took me 3 hours and 45 minutes to finish the marathon. Good. You were out there so long that your body was like, oh my gosh, what do I have to do at what do I have to do at the 2.5 hour mark? Yeah. So what we need to do is in training runs, I tell people you need to go beyond 2.5 hours several times, because that's usually the mark that affects everyone in the marathon.
It's funny, I hear you talking about time more than distance. Mm-hmm. So is the true challenges actually just the body's clock of the time that they're running? That's really where the walls are. That's really where the things are that you're training. The distance kind of sort of isn't as important. Not that it's not important, but the challenges can be seen in the time. Is that what I'm getting?
So I've gone, yes. The answer is it's both important. Our minds and our egos construct pace and distance, but from the neck down, our body only knows effort, which is pace, and duration, which is distance. So I've evolved. So the very beginning, I wore, as soon as I could get my hands on, well, back then in the 80s, the Timex, and then the early Garmins that were this ginormous, covered your whole arm,
right?
And heart rate monitors. I did everything. Science, numbers, crunchers. And then I've evolved to now being very intuitive. And what that means is I listen to my body. And yes, so for me personally, all of my runs are now duration based, all of them. And the good news is if I'm having a good day, I'll cover more miles. And if I'm having a bad day, I'll cover less miles. But I always cover the duration I need to cover.
Interesting.
So the weird thing about miles is you can actually shortchange your duration when you do faster pace. You don't think about that. So the duration forces. So I tell people, what are you thinking you're going to do? They'll say 4 hours, 5 hours. I go, okay. So relative to your goal, we need to get at least within a half an hour within that time. So my 5 hour marathoners, I try to really push them to get up to 4.5 for their longest. Now, they can walk, they can take breaks, and that's all included it. So if you're mostly running for 4.5 hours, that's close enough.
Right.
Because you don't want to also do the marathon before the marathon.
Right.
Because then you'll never do the marathon.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to go slower with more breaks and keep your clock running. So technically they'd say I ran for about 4.5. I ran 4 hours and I walked and stopped 30 minutes. That's great. You were out there. You were still running at the 4.5 hour mark until you got back to your car. Congratulations.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. I would have never thought about it like that. But some days you feel good and you kind of have a little pep in your step, and then some days you don't. But it is interesting that after you've run so many miles, now you see that, oh, it's just body breakdown, and it's going to happen no matter what.
Yes.
What do you think for most people gets them over the hump? Is it just actually facing the wall that makes you more comfortable with the wall? Or is it truly understanding how bad it is and then preparing better?
Both. Bracing yourself for the worst is one of the best things to do. I get nervous when somebody's not nervous. And I'm relaxed when the more nervous somebody is to an extent, the more I'm relaxed. Because a nervous person will do the right things, and an overconfident person will be more tempted to do the wrong things. They get more complacent. It's human nature. Yeah. I've been there, by the way. So when I say this, I have been overconfident and got my butt kicked, and I've been very scared and ran the race of my life because I ran scared. So bracing yourself is good. But I would say the thing that I realize about ultra or endurance runners, marathon runners, half marathon, whatever, is you're going to callous your mind. So the latest research that's coming out is fascinating. So up until 2005, it was just the body is everything. Satisfy the muscles and they'll keep going for you. But since 2005, there's been a tide turning that, no, the brain and the mind are very, very integral in your perception of resistance and effort. So when your brain gets tired, your body gets tired. So your goal now is obviously, yes, you got to work the body. Yes, that's understood.
Right.
But don't neglect the mind. So we do training to callous the mind to fatigue. And the more you get used to being okay with fatigue, and fatigue that is going to mimic the fatigue that you're going to deal with in the race in bits and pieces. So you go faster, so you deal with that fatigue. You go hillier to deal with that fatigue. There's different kinds of fatigue. You're going to deal with different kinds of fatigues on purpose in training. The number one fatigue is duration-based fatigue. You put it all together on race day with fresh legs and hope for at least halfway decent weather. And then you make final micro adjustments and saying, okay, given today, how is the weather? How do I feel? How did my taper go? How did my stomach go? How did my routine go? And then you warm up. I always tell people, just do a little shakeout run, slow as you want, 15-minute pace. I don't care. Just to see, okay, how do my legs feel today?
Right.
And then you make final adjustments. And then always in a marathon, start slower than you think you're going to average. Stay in a driver's seat. If you start faster than you think you're going to average, you are in trouble. I don't care how strong you are.
Right.
So we always do the come from behind strategy where you let everybody go. I say it. You're letting everybody go. Your ego hates it. And then you start reeling them in once you feel warmed up and you're in a rhythm and you're in a flow. And your goal is how long can you do that? How long can you be the one passing people until you reach your settle in point where, okay, these are my peeps. I'm at mile 18. I finally am settling into the pace of everybody around me. Wow. So you let everybody go for 3 miles. You passed everybody for 15 miles. And now you're going to hold your ground for the next 8 miles. You're going to have a really good race.
It's a pretty good approach.
Versus you're passing everybody in the first few miles. And then the entire rest of the race, they're passing you. That's not a good feeling.
So now in the marathons, when you finish those, is everybody trying to drink a beer like they do in the 5K? Because that always blew my mind. Why do you want a beer right now? I'd be so thirsty and miserable.
That's $1 million question. You can tell the people that drink beers after marathon, they saved enough to do that. But the ones, especially the ones that were going all out, basically they're trying to go as hard as they could for as long as they could. No, they don't want a beer. They actually just want to go lay down, and I tell them, don't lay down. If you lay down in the park, you're not going to get up. Your goal is to keep moving because your legs are going to want to lock up.
Right.
And, I mean, we want to lay down, but save it for, I go,
the couch.
You got this list of things to do after your race. Make sure you check the list off. That's when your race is over.
Yeah.
Because if you lay down, you're going to have to get assistance to get back up because then you're going to really get stiff. So the vast majority of the runners that push it, they don't have a beer. And the vast majority of the runners that just were happy to finish, they celebrate with a beer. So it depends on how you feel.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember my wife. She ran a half marathon. That's what she wanted to
awesome.
do, and we show up or I was there. I didn't run it because distance really wasn't my. I've ran a lot of miles in college and kind of just wasn't my thing. But
Right.
I kind of like your enthusiasm with it, and I used to enjoy running. My right knee kind of doesn't really like it as much.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any type of injuries like that kind of are a little naggy that hold you
man.
back?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that I pride myself in is figuring out. That was the biggest piece of the puzzle that I needed to figure out as a runner. So in 7th grade, nobody wanted to run the quarter mile. Everyone wanted to run the 100-yard dash.
Right.
So back then it was yards. So we all wanted to be sprinters, and our coach couldn't convince any of us to go longer than 200.
Oh, it was
So
miserable.
he goes, we're going to have a test. I want to see the toughest runners on our team. And his name was George Higgins, and he was the crazy marathoner back then in the 80s when hardly anybody did marathons. So we go, okay, if Crazy Man wants us to see who's tough, we're going to do it. He goes, I'm going to run for 2 miles, and all you got to do is see if you can stay with me for 2 miles. Run. Whoever stays with me at my pace for 2 miles is the toughest runner. So, of course.
It's a clever way to phrase it for kids.
So the run starts, and then so many people take off in front. It was a simple route, so we knew that it was out and back. You go out a mile, turn around. So we knew the route. So the impatient kids, they just took off. They go, oh, we're going to kick his butt. And then they're walking. So he said, just stay with them. So I stayed with them, and this other kid stayed with them. And we ended up doing like 8-minute pace. We went out, we came back, and then the other kid petered out. I was the only one left. He goes, you're our quarter miler. I go, oh. So there,
you tricked me.
I know. So Darren started okay, maybe this is what I'm suited for. So then cross country and on and on. So I've been running since 1982. This is 2022, 40 years. So for 15 years, I got away with murder. I was invincible. I was young, young and dumb.
Yeah.
And I would get injured, and I would be impatient. And I'd run through injury until I forced it. I'm gonna run. I'm gonna run until you get better. I back off, but not really. So what happened is, 15 years into my running career, in 1997, I got a really bad injury, and I'm like, oh. And I couldn't do it the old-fashioned way. I couldn't run through the injury.
Right.
I had to stop stop. No running for 8 weeks. Because every time I'd sneak out there, sharp as a IT band syndrome, outer knee issue.
Right.
And so from 1997 to 2012, I averaged a visit per month to this health professional. So this chiropractor, that physical therapist, that sports medicine doctor, that orthopedic doctor, that acupuncturist, that massage therapist. I would go to whoever anyone would recommend for that type of injury. And you name it, I injured it. If you name every body part without getting technical. So bottom of your foot, top of your foot, inside, outside, ankles, shins, calves, the knee, the inside, outside, below it, above it, quads, hamstrings, groin, glutes, hips, back even. I injured every body part from 97 to 2012. And in 15 years, I accumulated 156 visits. That's a visit per month. And so I went from running 6 days a week in 2012, March 2012. I'm a month before the Boston Marathon. And I'm running twice a week, and I'm injured. I'm still injured. So I've scaled back, and I'm getting injured no matter what I do. And I reached this critical point, like, okay, I'm going to do Boston because I'm stubborn. I'm going to do it. I don't care what my time is. I'm going to hobble through Boston.
Right.
Hamstring issue. But I need to figure this out. I need to figure out, what do I need to do to get healthy and stay healthy and make that my number one goal moving forward. So all of my performance goes, screw them. While staying healthy, I hope to blah, 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 while staying healthy. So I changed my paradigm. Finally, instead of going from adventure to adventure, I got to achieve this goal, that goal.
Right.
I said, no. You've destroyed your body in so many ways. You got scar tissue everywhere. You look like an old man when you start. You're crumbly, you're tight everywhere.
Right.
You can't play basketball like you used to. You can't even do regular guy stuff because you're so beat up.
Yeah.
So I went to this one physical therapist, Dr. Drew Dischinger, and I liked him because he was very blunt with me. Everybody else seemed to treat me with kid gloves because they knew I would refer my runners to them if they did a good job with me.
Right.
He didn't. So I went to Drew. I said, Drew, treat me like the idiot that I am. Get me healthy, and get me to stay healthy. Help me figure out a way to for the rest of my life, be able to do what I want within my limits.
Right.
My body's now self-imposed, because this has got to stop. And it took 3 months of deliberate, lots of rehab, And then I combined what he told me with all those other health professionals. It wasn't wasted. So I took the best of all these different ways of treating your body, loosening up stuff, and mobility, strength, mobility, strength, mobility, strength, all of that. I put it all together and I created my own way of healing starting with Drew's way to heal me.
Right.
And then I expanded it. Well, what does this have in common with what anyone else can do? What do we have in common? So I came up with a whole routine of what to do with a bad knee, a bad hammy, a bad this or that. And so I'll just say this, my goal in front of him, I said, my goal is to never see you or any other health professional for the rest of my running career. I'll see you for the big stuff. I get in a bad accident, car accident, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I go see you guys, but I need to figure out a way to fish so I can, like a mechanic who
Right.
fixes his own flat. I want to fix my own flats now because most of the stuff, they're flats. And if you keep biking on a flat tire, then that's where the frustration comes in.
Right.
You keep running through an injury, that's where the frustration. And so long story short, since March of 2012, so that's over 10 years, I have yet to miss one day of running due to an injury. I have been injury free for 10 years after reaching the point where I was only running
Right.
twice a week. Now I'm doing ultras. I have a 900 straight days I've run. I'm doing more now at age 54 than I did when I was younger and staying healthy. So I'm living proof that if you keep the maintenance that you need for your body, given your goals, and everybody's different. So the less somebody runs, the less maintenance they got to do. The more somebody runs, the more maintenance they got to do. So I'm very proud to say 15 years, stupid and young and dumb, 15 years paid the fine, did my time. But then the last 10 years, redemption.
So do you find that you're just doing like prehab all the time? Always, if you get something, you're addressing it right away? Like, be a little bit of specific.
Okay.
So say,
Yes. Okay.
Give us an example.
I'll be very specific. Okay. So have I dealt with issues along the way? Absolutely.
Sure.
So I'll give you very specific. Okay. So I'm in the middle of this workout. We're doing 6 to 8 by 800 meter. We're doing eight half-mile repeats. And on the third rep, I felt a little twinge on my that teardrop right here, right above where your knee is, the quad.
The quad?
Yeah, I felt a little twitch. Just like everybody else, I'm like, oh man, I was having a good workout. So human nature, I'm frustrated by it, but I take an injury timeout. Right then and there. I go, guys, keep going. I'll deal with this. So I'm running with this group of guys too. So I go off to the side, and so they finish the third rep. They do the fourth. They do the fifth. By the sixth rep, I'm able to jump in with them and have no issues. So what did I do? So what I did is I go to the nearest guardrail or anything that I can, any edge that I can push this muscle against. And then I do two things, press and lengthen. So what that does is that breaks apart the tight spot that formed. Then I repeat, I attack it from all angles. Then I go further upstream. And now I know that's the symptom. Where's the cause? So the cause for me. So I got this whole system of, okay, address where you feel it, but then address what's causing why you're feeling it there.
Yep. And
I address both things. So it's called muscle flossing. It's getting at those deep, dark, those tight spots that are, stretching is not going to get to them. You need to dig in there. You need to stretch the muscle and spread it out and break apart the scar tissue.
Yeah.
And then you need to stretch the whole muscle. So it's both mobility of specific spot and for the whole muscle. And then when I did the remaining repeats, I didn't go as fast as them. So I just jumped in. I scoot back a couple groups because I know you can't be perfect. And I listened to my quad. And I go, okay, quad, as long as you don't say anything to me, you're giving me thumbs up. But if I feel it, I'll stop again and take another injury timeout. So what I do is I nip it in the bud right away, in the middle of a workout, in the middle of a race, in the middle of a long run, I could have the highest hopes and the biggest, this is going to be the greatest run ever. If any part of my body tells me don't take another step, I won't. I'll still complain about it. I'll cuss. I'll be mad, but I do the right thing. That's the difference.
The discipline to do it changes everything.
Because health is number one. So what I learned is if you clean up the spilled milk before it becomes a big mess, there's less of a mess to clean up. So the vast majority of injuries, I've come to realize, we make it way worse than it. It started small. You didn't listen to it, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it was like a short-term injury. Now it's a midterm. Now it's a chronic injury. Right. Because you haven't dealt with it. So I know exactly, for me, most injuries are you overwork the muscle. It protects itself by forming scar tissue. and it's an inner brace. And so your body, you're telling your body, I love you. It's too much of a brace. I need to loosen you up a little bit. And everybody's different. So even if somebody has the exact same spot that I do, I got to show them how to locate and loosen their spots. And everyone's a puzzle of one. So now I've branched out, and I do this all the time for people. Like I'll meet them at a park, and I'll meet them where they're at. And they're like, well, where do you stop? I go, okay, I won't even have a clue. And I will show them the World's Your Rehab Center. You got park benches, picnic tables. Kids don't play on playground bars, bike racks, bleacher rails, the green generators, fire hydrants, stairs. Anywhere that's stairs by law, you have to have rails. So I go, you can take your normal run and all of a sudden look up and say, oh, I can stop there. And then the more stiff you are, the more times you stop. So here's the magic formula, and I'll share it with your viewers. I do rehab runs. So technically, yes, when I have been dealing with an injury, I don't stop my runs because I still want to get my endorphins. So what I'll do is I'll alternate 5 to 10 minutes of very, very light running, whatever that means. Maybe it's 10-minute pace, maybe it's 12-minute pace, but lighter than I normally go, with 1 to 2 minutes of muscle flossing and stretching. So what that means is I go over to the track. I'll do a lap or two in the outer lane. I'll stop at the bleacher rail and loosen it up, locate all my spots. How do you know which spots are tight? Okay, so when you press and lengthen a muscle, if it's a tight spot, it'll be more sensitive than healthy tissue, because nerves are in healthy tissue, your nerves are spread out. In scar tissue, your nerves are concentrated. So when you stretch that out and you dig in there and try to break it apart, that's very sensitive versus spread out nerves. You're going to kind of feel it, but not that much. So the more sensitive a muscle is that you're trying to figure out, the more tight that spot is.
Yep.
And so after you do the whole muscle, because if you miss, let's say you got 3 spots and you only went to 1, and you're going to say, this is not working. I'm like, well, you haven't found them all. So you do the whole muscle first. Then once you do it, then you go, okay, I got 2 spots in this case. So I'm going to go to those spots. I'm going to dig it on it, above it, below it, chip away, and then repeatedly do it. Think about this. You go to a chiropractor or somebody, and they do one treatment. They're very good. So their one treatment is equivalent to like 5 to 10 of your self-treatments. However, if every run you would do 5 to 10 treatments in a run, so you run for an hour and you stop 5 times, and you get better and better at it, because you go, you know what? Practice makes perfect. So you go, I tried these 3 different places, but I like this place. So I'm going to go to this place and keep coming back to this place. I like the bike rack for this tight calf that I have. So you go to the calf on the bike rack, boom, boom, boom. And then you know, okay, how much pressure can I apply? So you get better and better and better. And then now you don't need that chiropractor, because you now can self-treat. You model what they're doing. Now, and that's all we're doing. And we're just taking what they do and they've been doing. But instead of saying only they can do it, we're like, why can't we do it? And since we can do it every single run, so there's been injuries where maybe as long as a week, I spent 7 straight runs in a row to deal with it, and then it disappeared. And during that 7-day period, I probably stopped 70 to 80 times. So I had 80 self-treatments. Who needs somebody when you can treat yourself? So I only do it as needed. The good news is, in the beginning, I had to do this a lot because I had all sorts of old injuries. But so this year during, 2022, age 54, I probably stopped maybe once every other week, and I stopped 3 or 4 times maybe to loosen something up. So it's almost like I've loosened up everything so much, and I run so much smarter. I warm up so much slower. Most of my runs are a lot slower. I'm very picky with when I go faster now.
Yeah.
I realize that speed kills the older you get.
Right.
So if you got speed, that's fine. Keep doing speed, but I need a longer warm-up period. So I'm following all the rules on the instruction manual for an older runner, and that's why I'm not getting injured as much. And when I do get injured, I take an immediate injury timeout, and I turn all of whatever I was going to do on the schedule is thrown out the window, and I do rehab runs of run a little bit, floss and stretch a little bit, run a little bit more. And then the more you run, the more warmed up you get, the more aggressive you get. So that at the very end of your rehab run, you empty your guns and you just dig in there as much as you can, because you also don't want to keep doing this indefinitely either. So your goal is to, when you got all the blood flowing through your muscles, you get aggressive with that. In the beginning, when you're not warmed up, ease into it. And anyway, I got this whole system of injury timeouts, nip it in the bud, deal with it, rehab run until you're back to normal. And then when your body doesn't bother you for 3 straight days. So I go 3 days, no pain. Then I start following the schedule again. So I buffer it, margin of error. So this whole system has allowed me to pretty much do whatever the heck I want as an older runner who's been running for 40 years and get away with it.
It's pretty genius. I mean, I've noticed a lot of my workouts used to be based on how much weight you can lift. And it's become more prehab, more try to fix stuff, more am I functioning properly? And I work out a lot, like exactly what you're saying. But I think the magic sauce too behind that is when you do that during a run, I've never really heard of anyone focused on that during runs, but the amount of blood flow you have going through your body during those runs, I don't know that that's not a major component to the way you feel.
Yeah, I encourage all my runners that I don't stop. I've never stopped anybody from seeing anyone. I go, look, before your visit with this health professional, put some running shoes on. I understand you got your business suit on, that stuff. Put running shoes on or not, and do a lap or two before you meet that person, because you need to have a warmed up body that takes to whatever treatment it's going to take to.
Yeah, it can go a long ways. I've had things with like a neck in the last year and a half, so I spend a lot of time trying to keep range of motion and strength. My right knee, I actually think, is probably from my hip. As soon as I started getting more range of motion in my hip flexors, all of a sudden my knee is dissipated, while I used to treat with glute and IT band focus. I think a lot of it's range of motion in my hip. Arch of my foot comes from my calf all of the time. When my calf gets too tight, arch of my foot starts to bother me.
You're hitting the nail on the head. Your big brother muscles determine what your little brother muscles are forced to deal with. So yes, lower leg, calves, upper leg, hips and glutes. For sure, hammies, glutes.
It's kind of crazy, though.
Trace it to the bigger brother muscle.
It's nearly never where the problem is. And it's hard for anyone that doesn't get continuous injuries and have to treat them all the time to really understand that. But never have I ever found, as much as I have in the last couple of years, of no, you're hurt there, but that's not why you got hurt. You know, you're hurt from immobility somewhere. You know. But I don't know that it applies so much to most people that have types of careers that are super overuse. But it's really funny hearing you say, because that is what you do is overuse. So even hearing it apply to, hey, you can still do all the things you're doing, but you may not be following a running schedule. It's kind of more of a rehabby run. Keep your endurance, but
something's better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that running like every day, or working out in a sense every day of like blood flow, is something you truly stand by, or you try to stick a little bit to your run schedule? You said you ran so many days in a row, right?
Yeah, well, the streak for me, so being a running coach, I'm trying to understand the various factions of runners. So we've had streakers that I've had in my group for run streakers.
What's that mean, run streakers?
Run streakers are people that run at least 1 mile every single day.
Okay.
And so it helps me understand them by doing it, walking a mile in their shoes per se. So the ultra community's kind of grown. And for a long time, I'm like, those guys are nuts. But that's not a good thing to say if you're the running coach. So now that I'm dabbling in the world of ultras, I have a way greater appreciation. What they've done, I have even more mad props for, because I'm just barely scratching the surface for what they've been doing. And the run streakers, they get a bad rap because they're like, the number one criticism is, when do you let your body rest? What they don't realize, there's not much difference between a very slow, short run and rest. There's not much of a difference. So the run streakers that I've come across, the ones that are enjoying the streak and able to do whatever races they want, the ones that haven't changed any of their goals while still run streaking, they purposely schedule 1 or 2 1 mile days. So if they normally used to be, prior to their run streak, take 5 days on, 2 days off, so their off days are now 1 mile days, and there's not much of a difference. And so what they say, which I agree with, because I'm on day 900, on your easiest 1 or 2 days a week, and everybody should have at least 1 or 2 a week, the more tired you feel, the slower you go. Just to get the mile. Who cares if it took 16 minutes and you made it your mile, And so a 16-minute mile is not really going to beat you up. So you have your safety valves, and so as a run streaker, my goal is, so I got all these silly things. The pandemic changed everything for everybody. But one of the things that changed for me is prior to this streak, I went the longest in my life. So even though I was injured a lot, outside of forced stoppage, the first 9 days of the pandemic, go back to March 11th of 2020. I remember this distinctly. So my beloved Jayhawks were, they canceled the Big 12 tournament. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
They could have them. They're young, strapping dudes. It's all the old, unhealthy people that are getting affected by this pandemic. Let them play, and no spectators. I get it.
Right.
What they ended up doing a year later.
Yeah.
I go, this is, especially during the pandemic, we need something to, to distract us in a good way. Anyway, so I was depressed. I was like, and then the school district, okay, you're going to have to homeschool kids at that time. I have a daughter and son and single dad and all that stuff. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have to homeschool on top of my 2 businesses, on top of not watching my Jayhawks. They had a great chance. Anyway, so for 9 days, I didn't run a step. I was depressed. I was like, like everybody else, watching the news incessantly. What's going to happen now? What's going to happen? What are they going to cancel now? The whole world's stopping. And so then on the 9th day, I go, you know what? You need to get out. You've been cooped up in this house. You're going stir crazy. You need to go outside. And I didn't have any plan. You just go outside and run. We had recently moved into this new part of town, and there was this big, ginormous hill that I purposely had avoided. And so for some reason, I start running right toward it. I go, what are you doing? I don't know. I guess I'm making up for the last 9 days. So here I go. I'm going up this hill.
Right.
It's a long hill. On an average day, it's over 0.6 of a mile.
Oh boy.
And on an average day, it takes me about 8 minutes to climb because of how steep it is. There's no shoulder. It's a country road. And the people that drive, I mean, they almost like have fun trying to see how close they can get you. And I respect runner. As a runner, I respect drivers. I feel bad for cyclists because I don't know how they do it. But anyway, if anybody, even an old lady who's in a car, they're driving a tank. So so I'm under high stress running up this really steep hill that I've been avoiding. And I'm this is harder than I thought it was going to be.
Right.
And halfway up the hill, this idea pops into my head. You know what? This stress from the pandemic, it's killing you. It's killing you. It's killing your soul for sure.
Yeah.
And you're not doing your health any favors. So if you stop running, you've taken your number one way of staying healthy. And not just physically, just spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, mental health.
Right.
This feels, even though I'm getting this beat down right now, I'm not thinking about the pandemic.
Right.
I'm just trying to get up this hill. This is great. This is get my mind off this dreariness. So I made a promise. I go, all right, I'm going to keep running until this pandemic is over. Now, when I said that, I had no idea that it was going to take this long. I'm thinking, a few months. By the summer, we're back to normal. So it morphed. So I said, okay, I'm going to run every day. Here's why I'm going to run every day. Because every day I get to do my thing. I get to control the controllable.
Right.
Which is I can still go outside. There's no law that says I can go outside, especially by myself, and go for a run, clear my head, and de-stress from the previous 24-hour cycle. So I go build up stress, release it when you run, and then repeat day after day. And it became more for mental health issues. And so for a while, I didn't have any race goals because there's no races. They canceled all the races in 2020. So that was the only thing that kept me afloat was, and then I go, have fun with this. So I started driving to different places when I could. I go tell the kids, look, Dad's going to be gone for an hour and a half. I'm going to, I wasn't even doing long runs. I was just getting out, to drive to and from. Yeah. So I started, having fun with this.
To change it up a little bit.
Instead of doing the same boring route every day, that's going to kill the streak. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this part of town. I'm going to go to that part of town. And I was like, this is okay. Yeah. And the weirdest thing is my legs were like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Because Can
we get a break or what?
Yeah. But I adjusted my pace and I go, oh, what are the other run streakers doing? Oh, they're doing, okay, that's where they came up with the 2 days off, or now they're 2 short days. So schedule them on purpose. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. So my normal days, I run normal, but my short days, I run short no matter how good I feel. Anyway, so now, okay, so the pandemic is mostly over. We know this. But in the world of run streakers, you have to get to the comma day. And the comma day is 1,000, 1,000 days. So in their world, I'm still a JV guy. And I don't start something to be a JV guy. I got to be a varsity guy.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make it to another 100 more days. That'll make me varsity material. nearly 3 years every day.
So that
running
means every day of running for it has to be a distance?
at least a mile.
So just at least
Yeah.
a mile every
Yeah.
single day for...
And my at least, I have an at least of 10 minutes, but I run at least 15 minutes. So I've run at least every mile. I've run at least a mile every day. But because I'm a time-based runner, I go 15 minutes. The worst case scenario is like I feel like crap, I've got the flu or something, then 10 minutes. But that's like an emergency. You can barely move, so you're only going to go 10 minutes. But fortunately, I haven't had to use that. I've been 15 to 20 minutes at least. So if I make it to 1,000, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm varsity material. Now you guys quit making fun of me. Because these are people that have been running for years, like 10 years, 15, 20. I look up to them. I was like, how do you run without getting injured, car wreck? You just have a day where it didn't happen. You were traveling all day. There's got to be that day.
Yeah.
And there's a long list of that day that is going to...
A wedding or something.
Exactly.
Just like anything going on.
Yeah, or you just don't feel like it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I'm 100 days away. But anyway, I have a finish line. If I make it April 4th of 2023, if I make it that far, I will start out...
What's with this if? What's with this if?
I do better when I'm scared. I do better. Yes, there's a lot of determination behind the
right.
If, but I'm going to do everything in my power.
Yeah.
Okay. It's superstition too. So I use if instead of when because that gets me in trouble. So for me, if I make it to April 4th, I'm going to start at 10 a.m. on a track. And I will run for 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds. So I can finish at 11, 11, 11. And I will have run 1,111 days. So that's the way I want to finish it. Because I'm a perfectionist, I have to time the laps on the track so I cross the finish line right at 1 hour, 11 minutes, 11 seconds without cheating. Meaning
you're going to have to get something made, like some cool graphic or, you know what I mean? You got to get something like a plaque or, I don't know, something fun.
Is it? Okay, so after the 1,000, I'm going to start planning the 1,111 days. But it's one step at a time. So in December 18th is 1,000 days. Get that April 4th, and I'll start planning something big.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That's a pretty, that's quite the feat.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't even know that I've ever worked out 40 days in a row. There's always a day here, day there. So to just get out there and do it. I have noticed, though, that for my own personal workout regimens, where you're talking about mental health and things like that, if you work out, you are in just a way better mood, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy.
Absolutely,
it's just,
people's got to find.
Yeah, your running atmosphere of, just get out there and run 10, 15 minutes. It's not that hard on your body.
It really isn't.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, for somebody who's been running that long, it's like somebody who says, I'm just going to go for a walk around my block. That's it. That's what it feels like to me is you walk around the block, you're always going to feel better for walking around the block.
Yeah.
You're going to say, oh, yeah, that felt great. You talk to neighbors and you get some sunlight. So that's the other thing. So, yeah, anyway, I think you hit the nail on the head. Everyone's got to find that it for them. And if so several of my runners, since they saw me, they've started their own exercise streaks, but they call them exercise. So they'll do yoga for one of their days. They'll walk the dog, they'll garden. So they'll still run mostly like most of the days, but 1 or 2 days they'll do something different. And they call it an exercise streak. And I say that's legit. It's not a run streak, but to me, you don't need a bunch of run streakers to tell you that you're a streaker for you to be a streaker. You're doing something for your body. You're investing in your health every day.
I kind of like that. I don't know why I never thought about it. Like getting a catchy phrase on it. A streaker is kind of funny to make your brain want to do it almost. Really.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, boy, I can't break my streak. But I never would have thought about it like that. But I don't want to break my streak. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I may have to buy into that a little bit. I used to use the watch workout similar to you.
Okay.
And it all comes with experience that once you realize that they don't actually do anything, it's still, it's fun to see that it's always on and recording.
Of course.
It's cool to see the data.
Yeah.
But there's always that point where you're just like, put that thing away. It doesn't do anything anyway. And then that's kind of where I've been for about the last 2 years. But it's an easy way to measure the streak. I may have to get in there. I was thinking through my own streak of exercise that I may have to start because I do that competitive skiing kind of a deal, and my body falls apart. When you take a bunch of wax from falling out of the air 20 feet,
I don't know
then you got to adjust. Similar to you, though, I work on all the problem areas nearly every day.
Okay.
So as soon as you kind of lay off for a week or two, what do you know? Now you got
That's true.
Got a new problem area. Great.
Yep.
Start from square one. So, I don't know. I really appreciate your time. I hope that people might have learned something. If they want to contact you or need some help with some run schedules or something, you did say that you had a business that can kind of help them out, or some run schedules they could get access to, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. What's nice is for several of the local races, like the Kansas City Marathon, Kansas City Marathon and Half Marathon, the Hospital Half Marathon, the Garmin Olathe Marathon, Half Marathon, some of the biggest races in town in Kansas City anyway. I put my training schedules for free on their website, so you can do that, or you can contact me. I do customize training schedules as well for each individual. If you live in Kansas City, you can do the group runs, and as you know, one of the things that we all missed in the pandemic was our social health. So what I'm most proud of is we go outside where it's safe and run together, and we run in different pace groups. So you can find people at your ability and not feel like you have to keep up with anyone or go too slow for anyone. So we have from 7-minute mile runners to 14-minute mile runners, and each of these groups have a pace group leader, and they help the group warm up. So what I've done over these 25 years is figure out a systematic way to do the group thing for those that enjoy running in groups.
That's great.
For your longest run of the week, because it's a little harder to run your longest run of the week by yourself than your everyday run by yourself. Plus, you don't have to carry water. We put out aid stations, Gatorade and water every 2 miles, and special treats, because I tell runners, look, if you're gonna get away with your bad habits, they're bad, but they taste so darn good. The best time to do it is during your run. So if you eat that whatever sugar during your run, your body eats it all up, the muscles tear it up, none of it gets stored as fat, versus at night when no one's looking, all of that's going to be stored as fat. So might as well do it when you can get away with it, right?
Right.
Anyway, so organized runs throughout the city, scenic runs, every mile is marked, multiple mileage options. So from 5K runners to ultra runners, all are welcome.
How often are you doing this?
We meet every Saturday at a different location. For example,
how long is this setup?
Well, I'll give you specifics. So this Saturday we're meeting at a physical therapy clinic called Performance Rehab in Olathe, and so the distance options are 2 to 22 miles. The vast majority of our runners will go either 6 to 10 miles, or they'll do 16 to 20, because the half marathoners and the marathoners. And then we do have a big chunk of people, they're not doing any race. They just want to maintain their health, and they'll also do more like 6 to 10 miles. So most of the people in our group, they'll do, they'll be back in an hour and a half to 2 hours, and they're done. And then only the ones that are training for something, they're out there for 2+ hours to get used to that. Anyway, so I'll mark the course, and I have aid station coordinators. They set out the aid station of 3 coolers, 2 waters, 1 Gatorade every 2 miles. And it's almost like an informal race.
Yeah.
But we don't have to shut the course down. We're running on sidewalks and sidewalk trails, low traffic streets, and explore the city. So that's the other thing. Variety, because again, stay away from boring, same old. So I take all the excuses of why people don't like exercises, and I try to have an answer for them. We're going to make it exciting, fun, social, different. You don't have to carry anything. You just show up. And if you're not having a good day, there's always the group behind you that you can scoot back to.
Right.
And it's not competition-based. It's cooperative, camaraderie-based. And
especially when it's based in times, it's like this is how fast you're running, so you can follow that or not.
Yeah, so we're in it for the long haul. How do you show up every week? And then positive peer pressure. If you start showing up, hey man, where were you this Saturday? You're like, I don't want to hear it from these guys. Fine, I'll show up. You'll have a Saturday every now and then where you'll go out pretty late on Friday, and you don't want to hear it, so you'll show up, and then you're always glad you showed up.
Yeah.
So we do year-round group training runs. We divide it into a spring, a summer, fall, winter. So we have our seasons, and you can sign up anytime, and you can try it anytime. Everybody's welcome to do a complimentary run and see if it's a good fit, go from there. So, yeah, runnersedgekc.com is the website, and that'll take you from there.
Well, great. I appreciate you coming on. I hope everybody learned a little something. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Trevor.
Thanks.